Welcome back to the ETF Inspector. It's Tuesday, August 26th, a little after 7 o'clock at night, and this is our daily recap video for our YieldMax Ultra Option Income Strategy Fund Ulti and SLTY, the Ultra Short Option Income Strategy Fund. They are both weekly paying dividend funds. They sell options to generate income, and they are focused on income. Growth is kind of a secondary. As always, I'm on X at ETF_Inspector1 if you want to know when videos are going to be premiering, or reposts of distribution announcements, trades, or any big news coming out, as well as I also do my shout outs here from Buy Me a Coffee. We've had some recent people sign up to support the channel, so very much appreciated. Definitely want to give them lots of attention and show my appreciation. All right, so we look at the markets today. Ulti was up a little over 1%. Nice looking, lots of green, very little bit of red sprinkled in. Then we scroll past, we're done with Ulti. We got to move past our LFGY and our Roundhill stuff, and then we get to SLTY. Down slightly, 0.13%. Only a couple of green, more red than green it looks like, but that's a good thing generally. Unfortunately, the ups outweighed the downs, so SLTY was down just a little, not much, and it actually went back up more than it went down in the after hours. All right, we'll start with Ulti and we'll take a look. If you watched yesterday's video, there was an issue on YieldMax's websites and the trades weren't working. We were able to get those earlier today, so all the information has been input in our spreadsheets, so we're not missing any data. And then of course we went through and picked up today's trades as well, so we'll be able to talk about both yesterday and today. We'll go through yesterday's a little faster than normal because we don't need to talk about what's closed and rolled, because the holding side has already been updated since then. So we're not talking about closing and rolling on August 25th. So we will talk about it for the 26th though. So just very quick highlight reel on Monday the 25th, Ulti had trades where they were closing and rolling in AppLovin that resulted in a debit or cost of $4.3 million. Similar, ASTS cost them $13.5 million. Rocket Lab cost $12.5 million on their closing and rolling. Tesla cost almost $2 million. Unity Software cost $2.3 million. And then they started a call spread on Ulta Beauty. They didn't buy any shares, so it's not a collar strategy, and it's just calls. And forgive my my ignorance. I'm not sure if this is considered a diagonal spread or if I've got the wrong terminology, but they sold calls at $527.50 for this Friday, and they bought calls for $527.50 for next Friday. So same strike price, different dates. I don't know if that's called a diagonal or a vertical, or maybe I probably should have looked it up before we started. But that was everything for August 25th. That resulted in $35 million loss or debit, or money spent, money going out of the fund. And yesterday we talked about the $4 million value increase. Now we move on to today's trades, starting at the August 26th. We're back at the beginning of the alphabet. AppLovin, buying to close, still staying within the same week. Selling up, going from, I think, is AppLovin a $445? It is. So buying the 445s, selling 480s, adjusting the puts as well. Cost $3.8 million. We knew it kind of going into this week, because so much got closed and rolled prior to Friday last week, that Friday's large increase took a lot of our options in the money or very close. So then any upward movement this week was going to result in us needing to close those calls and roll them to a higher strike in order to uncap or unlock the potential of the shares we are holding to be able to bring in value. So it's going to be a rough trading week. If
markets go up. If they were to go down, obviously we'd win our trades, but then our values would drop. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. Bitmine Immersion just closed and rolled a $61 call down to a 54. So the price dropped, and they're trying to collect more premium. 852,000 collected. Coinbase closing and rolling down again closer, still staying within the same week. $1.7 million collected. Take a look at that put. They sold that $29 put that they owned, that they were long, and collected $1.2 million. That was enough to pay to close the sold call and to buy the new insurance policy and have money left over. Plus, they collected premium from selling the new call. So that put helped out a lot there. Robinhood collected $807,000, closing and rolling, staying within the same week, just dropping the strike from 115 to 111. IonQ, this one cost them money, $4.1 million, closing and rolling, staying within the same week, but jumping from $38 strike to a $41.50. Oklo cost $7.8 million on the close and roll. Let's see, still staying within the same week. This one was slightly different because they had also sold puts to help purchase the puts. They were cheap, 3 cents to close out. So that worked as far as helping purchase those puts. And we had to adjust our calls from 68 up to 79. Stayed within the same week, so that's always going to cost you money. 7.8 million, 7.9 million, just about 8 million on Rocket Lab. Same thing, closing and rolling to a higher strike within the same week. It's early in the week, so there's still time value left this week to collect. That's what they're trying to do. SMR, this one was funny. I'm not sure what happened here. This might have been a mistake or something goofy, but they bought to close one put for 4 cents. One. So $4 spent. Tesla spent $1.9 million closing out Tesla options and rolling them again, still to the same week, up to a higher strike. And then finally, Unity Software spent $5 million closing and rolling within the same week, up to a higher strike from $37.50 up to $41.50. So we're unlocking the potential for the shares to increase in value, but that's going to cost us, obviously, a decent amount of money. So I don't think we had very much positive there. That resulted in a negative $27.5 million on the option trading for the day. Before we switch over to the holdings, we'll just do a reminder, since tomorrow is Declaration Day. They earned over 20 cents a share last week in options trading. So they had a wonderful week trading. The IV, now again, that's not a perfect calculation. We'll call it, say the IV is probably somewhere in the 8 to 9 range. My dog decided to come shake his collar right next to me while I'm making a video. The guesstimate from me was $10.5 cents. That would be a 95% yield. But I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll try to pay us 20 cents. I don't know. But I'm guessing 10.5 cents. Obviously, the question came up, don't they have to pay legally, blah, blah, blah. So they've got to pay out their profits over the course of the year or pay taxes on them. So that's why you've heard them talk in interviews about paying 90% or something along those lines, just to make sure there's not some massive thing at the end. But don't worry, we've had plenty of weeks where we lost money and they paid us 10 cents, 9 cents. So I'm sure they've paid out more than they've owed us. So that's not going to be an issue. There's going to be return of capital. So in the meantime, that doesn't mean just because if they lost money every single week and paid us 10 cents and then all of a sudden they made 20, they don't have to pay us 20. So I think I'm done on that one. All right, when we go to the holdings, we've got a firm up 0.7%. 83s and 86s sold for this week. Now this is a collar strategy for Ulti. Almost all of them. We'll point it out when it's not. So that means own the shares, sell a call to generate income, buy a put to protect those shares in value. All right, 6.5 and 10.3% out of the money on those options. AppLovin up 4.14%. They closed and rolled the deepest in the money strikes. They still have 455s and 457.50s in play for Friday that are 3 and 2.5% in the money. AST Space Mobile up 0.8%. 50s went in the money by 0.8%. They've got 52s and 53s, all calls sold that are 3 and 5% in the money. I'm only highlighting the sold positions. That's anything we sold is to generate income. So that's what we're going to focus on. If we purchase something and it ends up generating income, that just means that it was an insurance policy that worked out, but we're not going to sit and highlight every insurance policy. Bitmine Immersion up 0.67%. They actually took the win here on these 61s as they were so far out of the money, closed and rolled them to a closer strike. They still have 51.50s that are expiring Friday, 3.14% out of the money. Webull up a little over 0.25%. The $15 strikes are dead on. Then they've got 15.50s and 16s also sold, 3.3 and 6.6% out of the money. Coinbase Global up 0.8%. Again, they decided to take the win on these. It is surprising. They probably had a decent amount of time value left. Let's see. Yesterday they were $1.92 to close. Coinbase, what'd they close them for? Today, $1.15. So I don't know. Credo Technology up 4%. They've got 118s and 120s sold this week, or 118 sold this week, 1.7% in the money. 120 sold for September 19th, 0.08% in the money. No action taken. CoreWeave down 1.07%. They're the big loser today. We like it when our biggest loser is down 1%. We've got 93s and 98s sold for this Friday, 1.7 and 7.2% out of the money. Galaxy Digital up 0.69%. They've got calls sold at 25.50. They're 3.1% out of the money. And then they sold $25 puts and they purchased $21.50 puts. So this is not generally how they do it. If they were usually selling puts to help finance the protective puts, they usually sell them a little bit further out of the money. So this makes it very odd to win this strategy, this option play. They would need the stock to end above this $25 put while ending below the 25.50 if you're trying to win the options trade. If you're just trying to make money, then it's fine for it to go even higher. But that plays it really tight, and it kind of makes that 21.50 put that's purchased a little bit odd now as far as your protection, because your shares are losing money as it drops, plus your put that you sold is getting more expensive to close out as it drops before it ever approaches that 21.50. Robinhood up 0.8%. They've got 111s, 112s, and 115s, all calls sold for August 29th, Friday. They're 2, almost 3, and 5.7%. Oh, those last ones did get closed and rolled to a closer to the money strike. IonQ up 5.2%, back over 40 again. The deepest in the money calls got closed and rolled along with their puts. They still have 38.50s and 41.50s sold as calls that are 5.4% in the money and just about 2% out of the money. Marvell Technology up 1.8%. 78 sold for Friday are still 5% out of the money. Nebius Group up 0.66%. We've got 69s and 71s. The 69s are 2.1% in the money, and the 71s are 0.7% out of the money. I did want to back up just a minute, so we'll put a little mark on Oklo so I don't forget where I was. IonQ, let's see how much we spent to close and roll these to unlock it versus how much the shares increased. So the shares increased by 8.5 million. IonQ cost 4.1 million to close and roll to open those back up. So the increase in share value generally is better than the cost to close and roll the strikes up. Not always, though. It depends. If we were already too far in the money, it could get ugly. Oklo up 4.4%. Deepest in the money calls were closed and rolled, along with the furthest out of the money puts that were sold to help finance the rest of the insurance policy. Obviously, they took the win on those. They still have $71, $73, and $74 calls sold for Friday that are all in the money, 4.4, 1.7, and 0.4%. Palantir up 2.35%. They've got 157 50s and 160s sold that are in the money 2.5%, 2.5%. Then they also have 162 50s and 165s sold that are still 1 and 2.5% out of the money. Reddit down 0.16%. 225s and 230s sold are 2.5 and 4.8% out of the money. Rigetti Computing, the big winner today, up over, call it 5.75%, not over. And this worked out good. Still didn't go beyond the sold strikes, so nothing capped there. Full increase in value. 15 50s and 16 sold for Friday are 1.3 and 4.5% out of the money. Rocket Lab up 1.9%. 44s were in the money. They just kept getting further. They closed and rolled them along with their puts and the puts that were sold to help finance. Obviously, they're way out of the money at this point. 47s are still sold in the money, 2.3%. Then we have 49, 50, and $51 calls, 2.8 and just about 6% out of the money. Sorry, I had a hiccup. Supermicro Computer up 0.2%. 44 50s are still 0.3% out of the money. New Scale Power, that's SMR, up 0.28%. They've got calls sold at 35, 50, and 37. Then they also have puts sold at 29 to help finance the rest of the puts. 1.3% out of the money, or in the money on those closest calls, 2.7% on the next, and then those puts that they sold to help finance, that worked out perfectly. They're still 19% out of the money. So again, that kind of turns into almost free money collected. I really do like this. I don't want to call it new. They've been doing it for a couple of weeks now, and maybe they did it way in the past. But I like what they're doing when they're, because these puts have gotten expensive, and the market kind of started turning over the last month or so. So we were using a whole lot of the money that we brought in, generating income, just to pay for the puts. So it's nice to see how they're trying to get some of that back for us. Tesla up almost 1.5%. They closed and rolled the deepest in the money positions. They still have 355 sold for Friday that are 0.5% out of the money. Unity Software up a little over 0.5%. Again, closing the deepest in the money calls. They've got 38s that are still in play, 5.1% in the money, and 41 50s that are 3.5% out of the money. That was Unity. Then we've got another line here, no gray, because we didn't buy any shares. They just started a call spread. Again, I don't know if I can't remember if that's a diagonal or a vertical or a calendar. It might be a calendar spread too. I can't remember. Not something I've traded before, but they sold calls at 527.50 for this Friday, and then they bought calls at 527.50, same amount for next Friday. So the stock ended at 526.06. These sold calls are 0.27% out of the money. I don't know if the goal is to close the whole position out at once. So this is a lot of why when people ask me to make my own videos and teaching people about options, I'm pretty good at telling you what happened, what they did. But I'm not the person that I would go to for an understanding on different option strategies. Obviously, I can have conversations with people
and help them to understand the basics. But so my thought would be you're hoping to close these out worthless, and then these still having value. That would make sense, right? So as we approach Friday, if these are out of the money, they're going to very quickly get very cheap to close out. While if it stays close, the purchased calls still have another week on them, so they should have a lot of value. So if you close it all out at the same time, maybe that's the goal, or do you close out the sold calls and then hope that the stock goes up the following week? Is it kind of like an earnings play? So we'll see. And then last but not least, Upstart down 0.38%. $72 calls are 4.5% out of the money expiring Friday. So all those moves, mostly up, a little bit of down, resulted in $52 million increase in value. We like it. We're plugging along, kind of making that comeback from that 560 where people were scared. Let's see what they did after hours. Came back a little more too. Now this says that they closed at 580. Excel takes a little bit longer to get those final pennies on these funds, so it was saying 579. There was an increase in shares yesterday. People purchased, bought 1.9 million more shares than were sold, so buying into the fund. 545 million outstanding shares, 3.1 billion net assets or assets under management. That does not include today's 52 million or the trading losses, and it also doesn't include if people bought into or sold out of the fund today. We'll find that out late tonight, so I don't wait to make that video for that. Tomorrow is declaration day, so we'll find out if we're getting another dime. I think we are. All right, next we're going to switch gears to SLTY. Opposite strategy is Ulti, not opposite of Ulti. It is not the inverse of Ulti. It is not a hedge for Ulti. It really has nothing to do with Ulti other than similar strategy in the opposite direction. All right, so we'll talk a little bit more about that on the holdings page. But we'll start with the trade. So again, yesterday the trade download was not working, so we didn't get to talk about these. So we'll talk about them today. RH, we closed our put spread, a part of our put spread yesterday. That actually resulted in a profit of 13,000. So let's see. What we sold 232.50s originally and bought 242.50s. And when we closed them out, it was the opposite, right? Buy to close and sell. So that resulted in a profit. Then yesterday's when we started the position on ULTA. It is kind of odd that they started ULTA in both at the same time. So let's see, they did a put spread where they sold 527.50 puts for this Friday and then purchased them for the following Friday. And on Ulti, I believe it was calls. It was. So there's same thing but opposite direction on each. So that's very interesting. But it cost them $440 total. So obviously a whole lot less money in play over here in SLTY. It's still new. RH today. SLTY today, the only trades were in RH again. They were buying some calls, selling some others, right? Adjusting basically the positioning, the strikes, still staying within the same week. And that cost $11,600. So on Monday, they actually made $12,900 in trading and increased in value by $84,000. And then today they lost $11,600 in trading and they increased in value by a little under $10,000. Let's see if that's the most. Looks like it actually bumped back up after things keep on settling. So we'll copy and paste that back. The reason I write it is I can't copy and paste that because that's not actually a number. It's a formula. So then it would copy a formula as opposed to the answer. And then it would change on the next page. And I don't want it to change. once we lock it out. All right, so the stocks within SLTY, they are different, right? They actually do not hold a single share of anything that Ulti holds shares in, and they have negative shares where Ulti buys the shares. These guys sell them from the start. That's why they have negative shares. The only similarity here is option spreads on Ulta Beauty, and that just started yesterday. But they are trading them in opposite directions in each one. Okay, Astera Labs, first of all, up 2.5%. That's actually not good because we have negative shares. So this is shorting, right? We sold shares that we didn't have, so we have negative shares. When we go to buy them back, we would like to buy them back at a lower price than we sold them for. So when they go up, that's bad. That's why that drops our market value by 9,000. But when they go up, that makes our sold puts further out of the money and more likely to close out as a win. But we've also got calls sold that we, again, similar to basically the opposite of the Ulti strategy. This is a reverse collar. So buying calls to protect in case the stock goes up, selling puts to generate income as the stock drops, hopefully. And then they also are selling calls sometimes or puts sometimes to help pay for the insurance policies or to help limit how much they would have to pay to close out if the stock moved too fast in one direction. So the sold calls and sold puts are both looking good for Astera, both well out of the money. Abercrombie & Fitch down 3%. That helped us by almost $13,000 in our market value. Our $93 puts are still 3.8% out of the money. Applied Digital is the big winner today. Big increase. I didn't want to reverse this and be confusing. They went up the most today. That's bad for SLTY. So realistically, you wouldn't think that's green, but I don't want to have a biggest increase in red and a biggest decrease in green. So maybe I will switch it up, and instead of doing the percentage, I will just highlight the biggest loss in red or the biggest decrease in value in red and the biggest increase in value in green going forward. That seems like a better idea. They've got puts sold at $15.50. They're 5.8% out of the money. Bloom Energy up 1.16%, 6.85% out of the money on those $46.50 puts that are sold. Bill Holdings down 1%. They've got $39.50 puts sold that are 2.8% out of the money. I do want to point out, right? So if they have shorted 9,600 shares, there's 100 shares per contract. They're going to have 96 options contracts to go along with those. So they are always doing the maximum that they can, trading the maximum they can. Once in a while, they'll maybe close something out one day, but not resell it until the next. So you've got situations like that, but in general, they've always got maximum at work. CrowdStrike down 0.29%. 405s sold on the puts are 3% out of the money. Here's another. That's one where they purchased a put even further out of the money in the event CrowdStrike really drops fast. They limit how much they'd have to pay to close out those 405s. Dell Technology down a fraction. What was it? 5 cents. 125 sold are 4.5% out of the money. Enphase Energy down 0.7%. They have $36.50 puts sold 3.8% out of the money. They got $3.75 million sitting ready to rock in First American Government Obligation Funds. They'll get put to work or paid out at some point. GitLab down 3.23%. That brought in $13,000 in value. $42 puts are 4% out of the money. Lululemon up a fraction, couple pennies. What is it? 9 cents. 197.50 puts are still 2.5% out of the money. Most likely on moves like that. So even though it was up today, a day's worth of time value probably made these less expensive to close than a 9-cent increase would have increased them. Mara Holdings up 2.86%. So the $15.50 puts, they were in the money. They have come out of the money after that increase.
but obviously the increase is going to decrease our value. MongoDB down 1.88%, $207.50. Puts are 3+% out of the money. Strategy, formerly MicroStrategy, up 2.38%. Here's another one. They were just about in the money. They moved a little further out now. 342.50. Puts are 2.5% out of the money. RH, biggest decrease today, which resulted in the biggest increase in value, 16,000. They've got puts at 207.50 that are still 6% out of the money. They've also sold calls way out of the money, 260s, that are looking like they're going to expire worthless, 17% out of the money. That just helped pay for the insurance policy. And then finally, Ulta Beauty closed at 526.06. They've sold puts at 527.50, so they are currently in the money by about 0.25%. Let's see what would work out best. Since we don't own shares in this, we actually want Ulta Beauty to go up to win that trade. At least I think so. I'm sorry. I am not very familiar with, I do want to call that a calendar spread, but I could be wrong. So if you know what it is, if you're familiar, please leave it in the comments. Right? I'm not one of those people that doesn't want to be corrected. I do not want to be putting out incorrect information, so straighten me out if I'm wrong. All right, we got lots of odd numbers. Obviously, like all our shares are carrying negative value, but all in all, the NAV, or the value of the fund, assets under management, is about $6 million. There's 125,000 outstanding shares. We weren't able to see if there was an increase day over day, but I will be able to going forward. Oh, and I do want to point out a thank you. So ETF Delta, I would assume a lot of you guys probably follow him on X. If you're on there, he does a lot of things with Ulti and has started SLTY as well. He's the one that actually let me know, hey, the holdings are working. You have to like clear your cache and clear your cookies or something. So when I was showing you guys that the downloads weren't working, I just needed to fix something with my computer, and now I'm able to. So going forward, we won't have any issues with getting the holdings. All right, they closed, like we said, around 49.44. They went up. Did they? Or am I thinking of Ulti? SLTY went up after hours, getting back close to that $50 mark. All right, so I got a dad joke of the day for you. Before I do, thank you for watching. Appreciate all the comments, likes, shares, everything like that. I like talking to you guys in the live chat. Obviously, I'm struggling to make all of them. I do have to, school's starting back up for the kids. We've got sports in and out of school, so we're going to have lots of late nights. So I will be always trying to get you all the videos, but that might mean that I can't always be in all the live chats like I was making this video while the LFGY video was premiering. But appreciate it, and I hope you guys are enjoying the content. And here's your reward after 33 minutes. What type of book has only characters and no story? A telephone book. It seemed like more of a riddle than a joke. I don't think anybody's laughing on that one, but it was on my dad joke calendar. It says, dad jokes are how I roll. All right, good night, and good luck trading tomorrow. I'll catch you in the next video.